Yeah.
All right.
Okay, now to Operation Epic Fury. President Trump suggesting attacks on Iran will resume if a deal with Tehran isn't reached by Wednesday.
Rebekah Castor joins us now from Washington, and she has the latest. Rebekah, good morning.
Rachel, good morning. Late last night, President Trump said he received, quote, pretty good news regarding Iran. He says negotiations are going very well and that he's going to know soon whether the Iranians will make a deal by his deadline. If not, U.S. forces are ready to respond.
If you don't have a deal by Wednesday when the ceasefire ends, will you extend the ceasefire or will
I don't know. Maybe not.
Again?
Maybe I won't extend it.
Okay.
But the blockade is going to remain. But maybe I won't extend it. So you have a blockade, and unfortunately, we'll have to start dropping bombs again.
The U.S. Navy's blockade on Iranian ports seems to be pressuring the regime to agree to President Trump's red lines. Since Monday, at least 21 ships have been forced to turn around, and Iran's economy is on the brink of collapse. So yesterday, the regime announced the strait is reopened. President Trump confirming on Truth Social the Strait of Hormuz is completely open and ready for business, but he's not ready to send the U.S. Navy home just yet.
Iran has just announced that the Strait of Hormuz is fully open and ready for business and full passage. But the naval blockade will remain in full force and effect as it pertains to Iran until such time as our transaction with Iran is 100% complete and fully signed.
Because of this, Iran's military is now trying to reassert control of the strait until America allows full freedom of navigation for vessels traveling to and from Iran. So that's going to be something to watch today, especially since President Trump also told several reporters yesterday that Iran had agreed to everything, including suspending its nuclear program, turning over its enriched uranium, and ending its funding for Hamas and Hezbollah. Charlie, Rachel, and Griff, back to you.
All right, Rebekah Castor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebekah.
So there are some conflicting signals because we are seeing reports that ships may be turning around because the Iranians are sending messages suggesting to these ships that the strait is not actually open. And if they are meddling with something that they have agreed to, as President Trump has been talking about, they had better be very careful in understanding who they're trying to play.
And President Trump says that he had gotten calls from members of NATO, and he said, I'm sorry, this is a little too late, a little too little too late. Listen to this.
And now that the Hormuz Strait situation is almost over, I received a call from NATO asking if we would like some help. Thank you very much, NATO. And I told them I would have liked your help 2 months ago, but now I really don't want your help anymore. Because they were absolutely useless when we needed them. But actually, we never needed them. They needed us. They need us. They need us so badly. You know, it's a little bit like if you're a politician. It's hard to believe I'm a politician, but after I won, people came up to me, sir, I'd like to make a major contribution to your campaign. And I said, listen, just so you understand, campaign contributions after I won don't count. Okay, they don't count.
That is the best.
So amazing.
It's so true. There are also a lot of people that came in at the 11th hour when they could tell that he was going to win.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he understands that for sure. Listen, we're seeing a massive, really consequential realignment. And I think it's about NATO. NATO's part of that. You know, what's the future of NATO? I mean, I think before this war, a lot of people thought no matter what, you know, even if Trump got behind them and said, give us more money, you owe us more money, you got to pay more money, there was still sort of this understanding that we need NATO. But after this, I think it's not just President Trump. A lot of people saying, do we need NATO?
And certainly, President Trump, if President Trump manages to pull off what he is trying to pull off with Iran over the past month or two, the United States will benefit from this, but the greatest beneficiaries, far and away, will be Europe and the further east. places like China and Japan and Korea. And so if he pulls this off, he will have done work that NATO failed to do and that NATO will benefit enormously from. And it is kind of interesting that they didn't lift a finger to help when, of course, we're always hearing about how when one of those countries get into trouble, it is a guaranteed expectation that American taxpayers are going to step into the breach and help them.
Well, and Ukraine was a perfect example of that. I mean, Ukraine was not in. A lot of people wanted them to be in, and sadly, the Biden administration signaled to them they could come into NATO. This situation happened in NATO, and it happened with Russia, and clearly Europe felt threatened by that. And we ended up spending an inordinate amount of money. We still are spending money on that. And so, yeah, that was a war I really wish we hadn't gotten involved in, and it was on their behest. So what is the future if NATO becomes sort of insignificant or goes away?
Well, just to your point, remember, President Trump's been calling NATO a paper tiger.
Right. And
those words are fairly hitting home because they really haven't done anything since the 90s. In Bosnia, in Kosovo. And ultimately, the premise of NATO, as people understand it, is this Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all. And they did not show up. They've been coasting for decades, riding on the comfort that if things come, a bad direction towards NATO, then the U.S. will handle it and we don't have to pay in. And I think the future, to answer your question, is the fact that the president has such a good relationship with the Secretary General Rutte of NATO, maybe there's hope to reform it. Okay. But I do think that the future, without a serious restructuring of NATO and recommitment of NATO, I don't know really what future they have.
Yeah, that's certainly their greatest hope.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.